Hey, what's going on, guys? It's Turin here, and today, guys, I'm here with Game 3 in the series between myself and Indypride. And again, this is with the new Bretonnia DLC, so Indypride over here is going to be playing Bretonnia, and I am going to be playing the Dwarfs. So again, I'd like to thank Creative Assembly for sending myself, as well as several other YouTubers, these early access codes. Definitely has been a lot of fun, definitely made my weekend pretty awesome, and, help tide you guys over until Tuesday. So let's get right into the army compositions here, and hopefully you guys enjoy all these new units. So as far as my composition goes, I actually picked my army kind of like I was facing old Bretonnia, simply because I didn't really know kind of the capabilities of the new Bretonnian units, and man, I was definitely in for a rude awakening here. These foot squires are just absolute beasts against the dwarves. They have 35 weapon strength as well as armor piercing. Let's go ahead and take a look at their anti-infantry bonus. So 35 weapon strength in total, and I believe they have a bonus of 8 for his infantry. So these guys do pretty well against dwarf infantry. And again, the traditional kind of using dwarf warriors against Bretonnia, they were pretty good before because again, they're armored and shielded, so they could be pretty resilient against Bretonnian missile fire. And on that same coin, they also didn't need a lot of armor piercing to get through to like men at arms with pole arms, spears, and those things like that. But against the foot squires, man, these guys do not perform well. But still, supported by runesmiths and rune lords, they should be okay for the most part. So I do have those guys there. I do have the warriors from Dragonfire Pass, another group of dwarf warriors, and in the back line, I decided to bring a group of coilers. I wasn't sure if he was going to bring any missiles because in the previous games we had played, he didn't. And in all honesty, I don't know if I would even bring missiles against the dwarves with Bretonnia anymore. I would honestly probably just spam foot squires and then bring the questing knights, who are the armor-piercing anti-infantry knights, are essentially cav. Very, very strong. I also really like that he brought the peasant blobs. Definitely going to be very good for congesting my front line. So I did bring a group of coilers just in case. Definitely wasn't the best pick, after seeing his army, but still, I thought it might be a decent choice. I do have the grumbling guard here as well, and these guys are probably going to be the most solid pick here because again, the foot squires over here do have 70 armor, so you're going to need some armor piercing to get through to them. So the grumbling guard or longbeards with great weapons, I think would be a great choice. As you can see, the grumbling guard here don't have charge defense against large, but the longbeards with great weapons actually do. So I think they'll be pretty good at dealing with foot squires and also at dealing with Bretonnian cav charges. So I do have those guys. In the wings, I have another group of dwarf warriors here and another group here to kind of defend against the cycle charging and the questing knights. But man, the questing knights, because Bretonnia didn't have like an armor piercing cav unit before, and now that they do, you definitely are going to have to change up your strategy quite a bit because this kind of old school dwarf build is definitely not going to work against them anymore. Aside from that, I do have the godlobber here. I have a cannon here as well with a lot of chevrons, and this cannon is definitely going to have to be my saving grace this game because again, it is upgraded to gold, which then increases, I believe, its reload time as well as its accuracy. So it's going to need to do quite a bit of work against these questing knights out here. In the back, I do have Ulthar's Raiders. Again, I think these guys are going to be pretty good in the Bretonnia matchup, simply because they have armor piercing. Marked by Ulthar will be pretty good against King Lewin and Cav and other targets like that. And they'll also be pretty effective at putting down the squires, because again, the foot squires actually don't have shields. So Thunders or Ulthar's Raiders or Rangers with great weapons might do okay against them actually. And in the back, I do have a group of Dragonback Slayers. So these guys, again, great pick against Bretonnia. They do have charge defense against large, if I'm not mistaken. They also have an anti-large bonus. They'll be pretty good against the Cav and things like that, and it'll be pretty helpful at dealing with heroic units diving on you and whatnot. So that's pretty much it for my army composition. Let's get right into Indypride's build. So I really like the peasant blobs in the front. Again, they are kind of like human zombies, and that's definitely their purpose. They just get in there, and I think they have like pitchforks and cleavers. I think some of them even carry spades actually, which is pretty great. So I really like the inclusion of those guys in the front line here. It looks like, yeah, he has 4 in total. They'll be pretty good at just congesting the dwarf warriors, and if I do a counter charge, these peasants will just eat that up no problem. Because again, they have 120 models, and taking casualties on these guys really doesn't matter, simply because they only cost 100 gold. So they're actually cheaper than zombies, but they are better. I think they're quite a bit faster as well, with 33 move speed, so pretty neat stuff there. Aside from that, his entire back line is just these foot squires, and these guys are just so good against dwarves. They'll definitely outclass dwarf warriors, and can probably honestly in a straight up fight just beat longbeards with regular weapons. I would actually need to do some testing to see how they do against longbeards with great weapons, but I think they might actually still win, because again, these guys do have an anti-infantry bonus, and I don't believe that longbeards with great weapons have one. Yeah, so let's go ahead and check here the grumbling guard. So they do not. So they have armor piercing, so I do think that the foot squires might win, and I think on that same coin they're cheaper than the ones with great weapons. I'm not sure. I'll have to look into that as well. So he does have foot squires. He has King Lewin and Leon Kerr up here, and King Lewin is just so cool now. He actually, let's go ahead and pause here for just a moment, take a look, and get in there. There we go. So he does have this new ability, the Lion's Shield, which provides missile and magic resistance. So again, it's going to be very good against Spirit Leech. It's going to be very good against focused missile fire. I really like that he has that tool, because again, losing Lewin can be pretty brutal for Bretonnia. So on top of that, don't want to go slow motion there. He does have questing knights here as well, and these guys are just absolute beasts against the dwarves. So again, they do have an anti-infantry bonus. So 46 weapon strength in total. But it says anti-infantry. I guess they don't actually have an ingrained bonus built in, so I guess they don't, but it still does say that in their tooltip, and they seem to perform pretty well against the dwarves. So aside from that, just these foot squires all across the line. The Grail Reliquae, I think is how you say it, which is great. It's so freaking good. Against the dwarfs, the psychology is going to be as big, and man, look how cool this freaking thing looks. It is just such an awesome unit. But it does have this. Let me go ahead and see it here. Icon of Devotion, which gives 16 leadership as well as immunity to psychology. So just a great unit. Definitely going to keep those foot squires fighting for a long time, and will actually make those peasants, a formidable force in the front line as it pertains to not routing. So you can see the Goblobber getting in here and doing some pretty good work against these foot squires. You do start with 90 models actually. So aside from that, he does have 2 more groups of questing knights over here, bringing up the sum total to 3, I believe. They are pretty expensive. I think they cost 1,200 resources, but against the dwarves, they're just amazing. They can run through the dwarf infantry and definitely shred that armor pretty quickly. So, and aside from that, that's both of our army compositions, and let's get right into this game, guys. It was definitely a really fun one, so hopefully you guys enjoy it. So here we got the Goblobber doing some decent work against the foot squires and the other units over here. Definitely was pretty happy about that. But again, with that new leadership buff that they have from the Grail Reliquae, they're not going to route as quickly as they would before. You guys probably remember some of my other replays when I was playing against Bretonnia. The Goblobber could route off a lot of Bretonnian infantry, before they even got there. And this group is still steady, even having taken a ton of damage. Now they just go to shaken, but once that temporary effect wears off, they will go back up. So right now I do have my quarrelers shooting in at these foot squires, but again, they don't take too much damage. They only took like 2 or 3 models losses right there because they are armored. So it's definitely a whole new game here, and I think I need to bring long greens with great opens next time in the front line. I think that would be huge, and helping to deal with foot squires, because I don't see Bretonnia bringing a ton of missiles anymore against the dwarves. Again, their missiles don't have armor piercing, and with foot squires and these questing knights, they're just so cost effective. I don't see why you would bring anything else. So over here, he does have the questing knights coming in. They're taking massive damage from the cannons, which is quite great. And in the front line, you can see the peasants are engaging against the dwarf warriors, and the peasants will definitely get slaughtered by the warriors from Dragon Fire Pass, who do have an anti-infantry bonus and whatnot, but still, they're just the initial meat shield to allow these squires to get in there and do their thing. So you can see that dwarf going in with a mean jump kick, doing his thing. Over here, the Rune Lord has engaged, and they did engage on some of these guys. You can see the peasant blob jumped in there, and the foot squires in there behind, which I really like that kind of synergy there. So and the King Lewin is just kind of flying above. I did mark him with Ulthar, and I'm trying to get some damage over here. But you can see the questing knights coming around my flank, definitely putting a lot of pressure on me, but I do get a good rune of Wrath and Rune off on those guys. Over here, my cannon is continuing to pressure these questing knights, doing some pretty good work, but still, he has 2 groups over here, and I don't have that many resources to defend my back line. So I do pull the Dragonback Slayers as well as the Rangers, and I'm kind of leaving this Runesmith over here to just harass these questing knights and do the best I can. So you can see in the front line, the peasant blobs are routing off, but again, guys, I didn't mention it earlier, he does have a damsel with the Lore of Life, so he is getting those nice heals off in the front line. You can see that upgraded Earthblood doing a very, very good job healing these foot squires up, and definitely very powerful inclusion in the Bretonnian roster, the ability to have those heals. So King Lewin does dive in and gets a nice little charge on this Rune Lord over here, but doesn't do massive damage. I was able to use the Rune of Oath and Steel and the Rune of Negation, but he does counteract that with the Sword of Caron. So definitely a little back and forth there, but King Lewin is a monstrous duelist. He hits like a truck. Right now with all these buffs, he actually has over 500 weapon strength, so 500 weapon strength, so pretty incredible there. In the back, it's actually not going too bad. My infantry corps and my slayers and the Grumbling Guard, who I did pull to the back, are doing a pretty good job versus these cav. You can see the throwing axe is doing well, but unfortunately, these questing knights are going to get in here. They did get past some of my defenses. The Rune Lord will probably take the initial brunt of that charge, but still, these Rangers are definitely going to follow in suit. So that you see they're coming in with their great weapons, and yeah, this guy just gets tossed around a little bit, but man, they just absolutely shred the dwarf infantry. Granted, these guys aren't armored anyway, so it's not going to be as bad. Well, I mean, it'll be bad, but again, their armor isn't getting pierced. So over here, they do get rode down, and they take massive damage there. So pretty rough stuff on my Ranger, but this Runesmith in here should be able to help a little bit. And over here, I was able to do some serious damage to these 2 groups of questing knights with my Slayers, my Dragonback Slayers, as well as my Grumbling Guard. So I'm definitely going to need to get them back to the front line here. So another Rune of Wrath and Rune going down, and again, Rune of Wrath and Rune is still going to be a great tool against Bretonnia and dealing with the cav harass and things like that. And honestly, in the back line, it's not going terrible. He's taking massive casualties with these questing knights, but where the battle is really being, going well for my opponent is in the front line. So you can see that these foot squires are cutting through my dwarf warriors pretty efficiently. There's actually 77 of them to about 38 of these guys, and they're going down quick. So I honestly don't think my front line is going to hold that much longer. I definitely needed some armor piercing, and that's something that you don't inherently think of when you're playing against Bretonnia, but you're definitely going to have to change your opinions of that, traditional matchup now that there's these new changes. So King Lewin getting a nice rear charge. The Slayers are trying to kind of head him off now that the Knights in the back have kind of been dealt with. The Grumbling Guard are fighting them, and they'll definitely be able to trade pretty well against the armor of those questing knights. But in the front, you can see it's definitely a pretty heated battle, but those squires are still just, cutting through my front line and giving me a lot of trouble. So these dwarf warriors down to 47 models. These foot squires are at 51 models, give or take, and they are getting that perpetual healing. So I was actually able to kind of drive his troops off here, but then they got that really nice heal, and they just absolutely cut through my defenses here. So they pushed through to the Coilers, and you can see my entire dwarvish battle line just absolutely slayed by those foot squires and the healing. And he also does have the Grail Reliquae over here. And again, leadership hasn't been too big of an issue for my opponent, but still, you know, the heal's been quite nice. And of course, just having this in the battle isn't bad at all. And it does have decent combat stats, actually. It looks like, yeah, so this fake horse actually hits for 49 weapon strength, which is pretty incredible. And I believe it actually does have a frenzy mechanic on it, which is pretty funny. So very, very cool stuff. But yeah, the foot squires and the peasant mobs have been able to just absolutely crush my dwarvish battle line, which has been tough. You can see this entire kind of faction, well, I wouldn't say faction, but this entire group of troops over here was able to push through and just having their way. So very, very tough stuff. So at this point, you know, my Rune Lord has been taking a lot of damage from King Lewin and getting dove. And again, with my front line crumbling, I'm having to, you know, pull a lot of troops I would like to keep, you know, in the front to, you know, help out in the back and things like that. It's definitely very tough, but the Grumbling Guard coming in here, a lot of my troops are still in decent shape. The Grumbling Guard are fresh, but the Questing Knights are going to come in here and just apply some massive pressure. But I do still have 55 Dragonback Slayers. King Lewin is taking a little bit of damage, but you can see an upgraded Earthblood on him, so he, man, any damage that he did take is just completely out the window, because I believe I had him down to like 80% or so, but, you know, that perpetual damage is very tough. But a nice Master Rune of Wrath and Ruin going off in these foot squires, and you can see my Rangers throwing some axes in there, but the balance of power is very, very heavy in Indypride's favor right now. You can see he does have a full group of foot squires right here in great shape. He has one of about 83 models here. They have taken a lot of HP damage, but that doesn't really matter, because again, if the damsel gets another Earthblood or a Life Bloom trigger off, they're going to heal pretty rapidly. Because again, like Invocation of Mehek does raise models from the dead. Earthblood does not, but still, you know, they do have high model counts left that have low respective HP per model. They're still going to, you know, regenerate pretty well. So the Rune Lord gets in here. He's pretty beat up, but honestly, there's just such a heavy Bretonnian blob here. He does have the Grail Relic place somewhere over here. I'm not sure if he actually brought it over. You can see the Runesmith over here doing some fighting, able to push off those foot squires, but he does have the Grail Relic way parked over here. And I don't really have the resources to go after it at this point. You can see another upgraded Earthblood. So honestly, I think the Bretonnian Death Star might become a thing, because foot squires are very cost effective for how much you pay. Also, they're all going to be immune to psychology. So that was one of the things with Bretonnia that was so strong before, when King Lewin was bugged, is that pretty much all your troops were immune to psychology. So it turned these peasants and quote unquote low tier infantry into just absolute linebackers. And I think we're going to see that again, even more so with the Lore of Life being available to Bretonnia now. So pretty incredible. Very well played, you know, by Indypride, kind of picking out this composition against the Dwarves and just having it work so well. Definitely some awesome stuff to see it in action. But, you know, I learned my lesson from the Dwarves. You definitely need to bring Longbeards with great weapons, I think, in the front line to deal with foot squires. Worst case scenario, Longbeards with great weapons can definitely outtrade peasants and, you know, better arms and full arms and things like that. So I think that's probably the safer route to go. I still like the cannon pick, and also the Godlobber wasn't bad, but I might actually just bring one of those, because I think you're going to need more troop density to deal with this Death Star. Still, the Rune of Wrath and Ruin was pretty effective, and as far as like troop capita goes, it wasn't that bad. I mean, the foot squires are starting to get pretty low finally, and I still have a decent core left, but unfortunately my Rune Lord is in bad shape. He does have a lot of troops coming back from route, and of course King Lewin Lian Kerr is going to come in and absolutely pimp slap this Rune Lord here. So the Questing Knights were also a pretty good pick. I'm pretty eager to see how many kills they got in the screen at the end of the game, but the Dwarfs continue to put up a fight. This Runesmith is still in pretty good shape. He's actually confident, despite the fact that my Rune Lord is so low. I do have 27 Dragonback Slayers in here. I have a second Runesmith, so my forces aren't in miserable shape, and you know, the Slayers are actually performing decently here against some of these guys, but a lot of their kills are going to be pretty inflated. You can see that Slayer, or that Grumbling Guard, actually just decapitated that foot squire, so definitely some pretty stylish stuff there. And also having that Perpetual Vigor aura is going to be pretty nice for my guys and keep them fighting pretty long in the game here. So very very intense battle. King Lewin, I believe, actually just did kill the Rune Lord, so a lot of the Dwarf Warriors are starting to get shaken. Of course the Slayers are in pretty good shape, but I'm surprised this Runesmith's still confident. But another group of the peasant mobs coming back with their pitchforks. Definitely going to do some work for the lady here. And I love the peasant mobs. There's got to be some of my new favorite units in this DLC. They're just so freaking cool. So King Lewin coming in for another dive. And at this point, I think the remainder of the battle is mostly just my Slayers kind of fighting to the death. So very well played again. Learned a lot about the matchup, and you know, you definitely have to change your tactics now with New Bretonnia, because again, they have these armor-piercing knights. They have these armored infantry that are actually very, very powerful for how much you're paying. So it's gonna take a lot of work to kind of figure that out. But honestly, I think let's go ahead and go on the breakdown screen. We can get a better perception of things there. So I think maybe, yeah, so I like the Rune Lord. He was a decent pick. I think Grombrindle might not be bad either to get the flash bomb. So when Lewin dives in, you can trap him and slow him. Maybe do a little bit better in that respect. So let's see here. So I like the Runesmiths. The Dwarf Warriors, I probably won't even, you know, if any, I might just bring like one or two to kind of plug up my flanks. But I think Longbeards with great weapons would be a pretty good pick. I'd probably cut the Quarrelers, just bring the Ulthar's Rangers, cut one of my siege weapons just to allow for some more Longbeards, and just kind of start to go that route and just try and trade armor to armor there. You know, again, that's going to open up a lot of options for Bretonnia, because again, Bretonnia can kind of mind game you. They can, you know, they could only bring like 2 or 3 foot squires, and then they could bring men at arms with pole arms, or units that, you know, aren't going to be as victim to armor piercing. So it's going to be pretty awesome to see what they do, but very effective on the front line. 67, 69, 97 kills, and that's against Dwarves. That's pretty darn good. 62 and 88, and also his cav did pretty well. The cannons were able to shut down some of those, so I do think that bringing an upgraded cannon is going to be pretty good against Bretonnia. So yeah, just all around awesome match. Very well played to Indypride. It was a lot of fun. Definitely a great learning lesson for the Dwarves. So hopefully you guys enjoyed that cast. So I will be casting Game 4. They're going to be released at the same time, so as soon as you guys are done watching this, I would just go recommend to jump into that game, and it is going to be Musion versus New Bretonnia. So stay tuned, guys. Thanks again for your support. Thanks again to Indypride for playing, and we'll see you all next time.